hours. Bringing up again in the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling that dealt a crushing blow to the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Americans took to the streets across the country. Organizers say thousands gathered yesterday in Selma and Montgomery, Alabama, to protest gerrymandering and the erosion of black political power while honoring the historic 1965 civil rights marches that made the Voting Rights Act possible. Listen to what some of the protesters had to say as Republicans in southern states intensify efforts to redraw congressional maps in their favor before the midterms.
The thing that got me the other day was my aunt, who participated as a foot soldier, said, and she was in pain. And she said, Clyde, why in the world do they hate us so much? Because she participated in all of the marches. And it just sort of hurt my heart to hear her say that at 92 years old.
There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope. And our people have strong resolve. After 400 years of slavery, they still said, you know what, guys, we'll be getting out of this. So in the same vein, we'll be getting out of this. This is not the way things are not the way they will always be.
I like her optimism. David Drucker and Don Calloway are back with us. Don, that soundbite from the guy, from Clyde, talking to his 92-year-old aunt.
Yeah.
And she says, why in the world do they hate us so much? I'm glad we had that soundbite because, you know, at the end of going out of the last break, I talked about anger among Democrats. And I'm just wondering, am I wrong about that anger and the demonstrations and the things that we were hearing from out of Alabama yesterday? Will that anger show up at the voting booth in November in ways that those of us in the D.C. bubble are not anticipating?
Yeah, I expect that it will, but we have to be honest about the realities of these deep red states, is that they are not unorganized or not uninterested in voting. They are suppressed. They are intentionally and optimally suppressed, and that's been a 60-year game by the National Republican Party. We're talking about 2013, Holder versus North Shelby County, North Carolina. We're talking about the elimination of Section 2, the elimination of Section 5. We're going all the way back to a generation of adults who are seeing their manifestation of wanting to erase the voting rights gains of 1964 and 1965. So that's not something that's fixed in one election cycle because of anger. Here's what does fix it. If I could look at the camera and talk to my good fat brother, Hakeem Jeffries, you have to be willing to, once you get the gavel in January, you have to be willing, Brother Hakeem, to hold the chamber hostage to say nothing moves until we pass the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And Democrats have not been willing to burn it down ever. If he had done that 5 years ago when Nancy Pelosi had the gavel, we would not be in this position and we would not be in a situation where Section 2 was now taken. Because remember, Section 5 was taken a few years ago. Democrats have to translate voter anger into using the authority they have. Shut it down, Speaker Jeffries.
Now, that was part of the conversation we had yesterday.
But that's after they get the majority.
That's after they get the majority. But again,
creativity.
What are you going to do when you get it? You have to tell voters what we're willing to do when we get the gavel.
And this is also the other part of the debate we were having yesterday, which is that this didn't happen in a vacuum. This has been a concerted 60-year push. But why have Democrats let that happen?
Democrats have to get, you know, one of the things that I love about the Trump era is that it shows that Democrats are going to have to get a lot more comfortable with transactional politics. Ethical transactionality has its space in this American democracy. Republicans are naked with it and often unethical with it. Democrats believe in slow progress, and we believe in proposing a commission which will consider studying how to solve a potential problem down the road. It's got to be time out for that because people are losing rights in real time when you don't take real action.
David, that is true, and people are going to be upset, and they're going to vote. But a lot of the damage, I guess a lot of people would say, is done, right? A lot of this is baked in. And so when you talk to Republicans, are they at all worried about this backlash, or are they thinking of it in like strict political terms, as they have done successfully on this issue for such a long time?
I think they're looking at it strictly politically for the most part, in that politicians never. I mean, again, I say this every week, as long as it's not Tuesday yet. They don't look past They don't look past this Tuesday. Right. So if you're a Republican looking at losing the majority, and the Supreme Court makes a decision about how you can draw districts that allows them to increase the size of their majority by a mid-decade redraw, they're going to do it.
Right.
And they're going to worry about the consequences later. You know, I think, as a matter of strategy, one of the reasons why all of the generic balloting has Democrats in front and growing their advantage on the generic ballot is because voters are concerned about affordability and inflation and the war. And Democrats can maximize this by focusing on that. And they need to be careful not to make promises about legislation that they cannot deliver. And with a 60-vote filibuster, you cannot deliver anything without enough bipartisan support. And if they're looking ahead to 2028, again, something politicians don't tend to do until they're there, you don't want to make promises you are not keeping, because your voters are then going to look at the next election and say, you said you were going to do this, you couldn't deliver it, why am I showing up this time? And so there's just a lot to factor in. But Republicans, it's all pure politics, but that's what you would expect from incumbents who want to keep their jobs.
Yeah. Because I've talked to a lot of Democrats, and that's where many of them are too, especially some of the strategists, where it's like, we can't make promises we can't keep. Like, we're going to get the gavel. We should say the things that we actually can get done in the House. Maybe the Senate will do its own thing, but like, say what you're going to do in the House and go from there. Otherwise, there might be a backlash on Democrats, because voters are willing to try new things, right? And that's the thing I think that 2024 should have taught everybody, is that there are a lot of black men and brown men who would have never voted for Donald Trump, but things felt so dire to them at that time. They said, you know what? Okay, well, this guy wasn't working. Let's try someone else. This woman wasn't working. Let's try something else. And that is new, I think, in politics.
I think you have to remember, one of the reasons Donald Trump was able to swipe the Republican nomination from that collection of very capable candidates in 2016, because the Republicans, from the voters' point of view, Republican voters had been making lots of promises about what they would do with their congressional majorities, and they weren't able to deliver, not on repealing the Affordable Care Act and a number of other things. And so people said, I've been voting for all the normal candidates, the candidates you told me I was supposed to vote for. You guys haven't delivered. I'll take a flyer on this guy. Right. And Democrats could end up caught up in that very same thing, just in a different way, if they repeat that pattern.
Yeah.
The problem is that flyer has real ramifications for real people's lives. So it's not just experimentation when you're talking about eliminating people's civil rights and liberties. And so that's why the political experimentation thing means a little bit more when you're in one of those marginalized groups.
David Jucker, former Missouri State Representative Don Calloway, with a message for his frat brother today. Let's see if he sees it. Thank you both for coming to the weekend.